Hope that you enjoyed your lunch. And now, maybe some of you have already met those two ladies who will join us very soon. Kath Little, Director of Festivals Edinburgh, and Kath Mainland, who is the Chief Executive of the Festival Fringe Society. Do please welcome.
Hello. It's not on there. It's on here. Oh, there we go. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Are you all still awake? I'm wearing a very loud tartan suit, so even if what we say doesn't keep you awake, I'll just throw myself in front of you every now and again. We're just waiting. Oh, great. Now we're just waiting for our notes to come up as well. We haven't got it on the screen here. Bear with us.
Would you like me to do a Highland dance?
No.
Didn't work.
Have we got, can we get something on the screen?
We can.
We can do it, but... Yay. So, hello everyone. I'm Faith Liddle, the Director of Festivals Edinburgh, which was the organisation that was created by the directors of Edinburgh's 12 major festivals to lead on their joint strategic ambition. And this is Kath Mainland, who is the Chief Executive of the Edinburgh Festival Fringe Society, but she has also been the Chair of Festivals Edinburgh, and we'll say a little bit more about that in a moment, and continues to be the Chair of our collaborative marketing working group, into which a lot of the innovation work that we're going to tell you about has now been embedded. So she's coming at it from a number of angles. What we'd like to do now is just provide you with an overview of who we are and how we work together to set the scene for our innovation programme and provide some examples of the work that we've undertaken, but also just to give you a little taste of some of the wider partnerships that we've engaged with in this field, all in under 30 minutes. But again, we'll be around. If we have time for questions, we'll do that, but we'll be around, definitely be around for questions afterwards as well. So just to give you a bit of context, this is the history of our festivals. They began back in 1947 with the International Festival, which was created in the wake of the Second World War to bring the countries of Europe and the world together. The Fringe was born in the same year as an act of revolution when 8 companies decided to come along anyway and take advantage of the media and also the buyers and producers and the audiences who would be in the city. And our film festival began in that year as well. But as the years have gone by, our festivals have evolved in different ways. Some of them artist-led, occasional ones as tourism initiatives, some of them as umbrella organisations, all in their different ways to create what we now call our festival city. There are 12 festivals covering a multitude of genres, literature to multicultural arts, taking place at different times of the year. Edinburgh International Festival in August, for example, or Hogmanay, which is our New Year celebration, and ranging in scale from Kath's Fringe, with over 3,000 shows, to Imaginate, our Children and Young People's Festival, which may have a dozen. And it's also important to remember as we go through this, because it looks big, is that some of our festivals have 50 staff, and some of them have one full-time member of staff. So we're operating at various scales in terms of capacity as well. Our economic, our impact and our value across economic, social and cultural areas, which we've all analysed, is enormous, as you can see from some of the numbers here. As I said last night at the event, one of the facts that I'm very proud of is that our festivals have a bigger economic impact than the whole of the golf tourism industry in Scotland, which is a big industry. I'm not very popular with the golf tourism people when I say that, obviously. But numbers can blind you. And so today we'd like to take your attention away from the numbers and focus on processes that are applicable, we think, at any scale. So, as I said, Festivals Edinburgh was created by the directors of the 12 major festivals. It was born out of their combined ambition and their individual ideas and ambitions as well. And those individual ambitions continue to be the things that we serve, actually, although we work together. And our mission is to support the festivals in sustaining and developing our position as the world's leading festival city. And we do that through projects and initiatives, and also through a lot of advocacy and investment and fundraising. As you can see from this diagram, at the top we've got the 12 festival directors, about 8 full-time equivalent staff. And then what we have under that is a series of collaborative working areas where each of the festivals have representation, but where we focus our strategic energy, but also into programmes and activities which we undertake, sometimes in the short term, sometimes as prototypes, sometimes much longer term. And I'll tell you a little bit about the process that allows us to evolve those pieces of work, particularly through innovation. Each group has representation from a staff member from each festival. It's chaired, as I gave the example, by Kath or another one of our board members. So that feeds back into the board, and it's supported and sometimes enacted. We have teams, for example, to deliver specific pieces of work by Festivals Edinburgh member of staff, our executive team, or a team as a whole in the organisation. Now, we're 7 years into our collaboration, and it has brought its joys, but also its sufferings as well. We've built trust, but mostly through a great deal of pain, of vigorous debate around our, I think somebody used the word, constructive differences. There have been enormous benefits, almost insurmountable challenges, but we've developed a process that takes account of our humanness, because actually that's a thing that we struggle with sometimes, that's based on consensus and endless experimentation. I remember I once was speaking to a kind of major kind of innovator in the kind of digital music world in Scotland, and I told him how we worked, which is by consensus. If a single person says no or blocks our process, we stop, we negotiate, we start again. It's not democratic. Everybody has to agree to the direction of travel. And I thought he was going to throw up. He was so horrified because it seems contrary to his world. But in fact, it's allowed us to achieve work and innovation, which we'll talk about in a moment. And just to say a little bit about how we work, basically we are looking for areas where, in order to maintain our position as the world's leading festival city, or to ensure we can be as good as we can be, we identify areas of work that we can contribute to and develop together to enhance each of us individually. And to do that, we future gaze. And the areas of work that you saw, marketing, absolutely essential, innovation, environmental practice, those were all areas that we future gazed and defined as being essential to how we work. We define those sometimes as a board, sometimes we bring in expertise, sometimes we do it as an executive team. The board then agree exploration, and then we always bring in external research, auditing skills, assessment or research, so that it's not being defined internally. We've got an external view that's provoking us, but that is also ensuring that it doesn't end up as an internal argument. If we think that research has produced a kind of valid way forward, we create a cross-festival working group, which is where the complications and some of the joys begin, really. And then they evolve a strategy, they agree that with the board, evolve an action plan, agree that with the board. But you'll see all the way through that we stop. Because we say that there has to be consensus, we often don't have to stop, because we allow those arguments to expand. We allow the discussion to expand, and everybody knows at any point they can stop it. It sometimes allows them to keep listening and keep maybe taking some of the steps they wouldn't do if they were in a panic and thought it was a democratic process. And all the time we're revising, and all the time, myself particularly and my team are looking at where we're going to bring the money in to make it happen. Just moving on to the precision stuff around innovation, I just wanted to start with a quiz question, which I can ask, and Kath probably can't because it's about something to do with her. It's, where was the world's first mobile app used? In the Edinburgh Festival Fringe. And it was a partnership with Nokia and Orange in 1999, which is great. It shows we were innovating at that stage, but we still had to get wee men on motorbikes to deliver the tickets. We have moved on since then. But just thinking about why innovate, it's brutally simple. Challenges are increasing for us, change is accelerating, and the companies and countries that can innovate most rapidly are likely to gain the most benefit. Our markets are not stable, competitors are targeting our share of the pie, customers are fickle. And today we're focusing on customers, our audience, and the fact that they're changing their behaviour primarily as a result of new technologies is something we have to address. The way they plan their visit to our festivals has changed, the way they get their information, purchase their tickets, engage with shows, create their own content, tell their friends and share their thoughts through social. And the alternatives for us are either to make change or be changed. In 2009, we commissioned, this is our research section, you know, that diagram, we commissioned an innovation audit, and it recommended that, given the capacity issues typical of most cultural organisations, there would be potential to develop the festival's innovation practice by establishing a programme of work through existing collaborative structures. And they were tasked with identifying and developing innovation opportunities across our festival community. And the audit was the basis of what became the Edinburgh Festivals Innovation Lab, also known as Festivals Lab, and was made possible by a grant by our national funding agency, Creative Scotland. And they actually created new money to make that happen, which was really exciting for us. It was an idea that then drew in the funding. It wasn't us just going for the funding that existed. And now I'm going to hand over to Kath, who's going to say a little bit more about our innovation programme.
Thank you. Yes, so I'm just going to talk through about how we work in the lab and just give you some really practical examples of work that we've undertaken and where and when it's been successful or not. So the lab is managed through the process that Faith describes by the core Festivals Edinburgh team, but overseen by the Cross-Festival Innovation Working Group. And it focuses on four things, really five things, really. Process. How do we identify ideas? Why is an idea a good one? How are we going to deliver it? Always looking externally to networks. Where are the useful collaborations that we can develop with individuals or communities or universities or companies? Faith will talk about that a bit later. Who are the people that we want to have an impact on, the people who spend their time making the festivals as great as they are, particularly in this context our staff, the staff of the individual festivals. Projects and prototypes which use design thinking and digital tools to create new value. All of the work that we do collectively is about additional value, not just replicating or substituting things that we can do ourselves individually. And then finally, learning. So there's a lot of relevant learning for the whole of the cultural sector, really nationally and globally. And of course, we ourselves are learning all the time from the work that we do together and the ways that we work with our partners. So essentially, don't worry about this, it's a bit of a nosebleed, it's just a screen grab of the lab on the web. Essentially what the lab is trying to do is bring technological solutions to challenges that individual festivals face. So I'll give you an example of some of those projects and the challenges that they were addressing. And I'll start with the Open API project, which actually came first and was the kind of stepping point to lots of the subsequent projects. It's worth saying, actually, as Faith said, that there are challenges all the time, there are capacity issues. So one of the first things we had to do in the Innovation Lab was bring in some really basic investment into core resource for festivals, just around hardware and software, to give us the capacity to work and think collectively. So the Open API, one of the initial challenges that we had all encountered was how we got our festival programme information out into the world to as many media outlets and as efficiently as possible. Collectively, we have an enormous volume of listings, 50,000 individual performances at the Fringe alone, which is one of 6 simultaneous festivals happening in August. And of course, the customers, the audience, don't want to make the distinction. We don't need them to make that distinction. They want to find out everything that's going on. Previously, we were all individually manually exporting all of that data and then updating it every day, which was time-consuming. It made it subject to error. It made it out of date really quickly, and of course was just limiting in the reach of that. So the answer that the lab came up with was the creation of the API to provide an automated system that any press or media outlet could plug into and have access to all of those individual or collective listings. So this is what happens. These are the 12 festivals. So there's a live feed from each of the festivals, either from their website or from our box offices, with relevant data, which is all tagged and then pulled into the central API, which essentially just becomes a great big database of all our programme listings. And then interested parties plug into that at the other end and can take a live feed pretty much in whatever form they want or need to enhance and populate whatever it is they're going to do with it. So again, don't worry too much about that. It's just a range of the media partners that took the API. We don't quite have the statistics for 2014 yet, but in 2013 we served a total of just over 1 million requests from 39 external users, which was a pretty big increase on the previous years. So obviously this is a development that has solved the challenge and then really extended our reach out there into the world. Users access the API through a secure registration system, and the data, as I said, is continually updated and verified. And actually what's happening by accident rather than by design is that itself is becoming an archive which has opened itself up for great possibilities in the future. And those possibilities really extend beyond. We were thinking very much practically about programme listing information, but actually it became evident when we took this approach that providing that information out there in the world in an open, democratic manner to anyone who was interested just opened up a huge range of possibilities. And so we developed Scotland's first culture hack. So you'll know a hack day is an event where developers, designers and ideas people gather to develop new digital prototypes in a short, very confined space of time. So Culture Hack Scotland ran for 24 hours in Edinburgh and brought together 50 developers and designers from Scotland and England alongside 50 cultural professionals. And in the 24 hours they developed 30 new projects which ranged from just visualizations of data through audience services, practical applications and games. And following the event, 8 of those projects were then developed further into full production. And so Culture Hack showed us really that it was important for us to work in this way. It validated the case for us, I guess, in providing the data openly. It demonstrated the importance that other people have been talking about prototyping. And also it moved us as cultural organisations away from purely transactional relationships, not just contracting a supplier to build something for you that you thought you knew, but actually really harnessing digital talent and more importantly, I suppose, building a network with those people with digital talent. So we created a number of things. One of them was called FestiFriend. It was designed for people who are going to the festival on their own to help them find new friends or maybe even dates at the festival by matching them up with other people who are looking at the same events as they were. Fake Fringe was just a game, really. The Fringe is a massive programme, and the companies themselves, because it's open access, they write their own copy, 40 words. So really it was asking you, the audience, to identify which one was fake. So just a laugh, really. But actually had the benefit for Fringe companies of seeing why audiences responded to what they were saying about themselves. But then more practically beyond the games and the dating applications, one of the Edinburgh-based developers took the book festival listings and made a mobile site out of them, which tied a huge amount of more information to each event, so by bibliographies, press mentions, photos, all sorts of things. And the book festival actually liked it so much that following the hack, they developed that into their full mobile site for the festival. And because of the way we work, all the code for that site was then available open source for anyone else who wanted to use it. So this approach in data followed through from, I guess, being democratic with our audiences and our artists. So we came up with the Ideas Challenge, which was a a large-scale ideas competition where anyone with a connection, audiences, artists, performers, producers, anybody at all, could suggest things to us that they thought would make the event better. It was run by Challenge Post, a New York company who had previously worked with the City of New York and the Obama administration. And the system had a public voting system, and the top 25 entries were voted, as voted by the public, won prizes. And then a second higher level prize was won by the 5 ideas that rated most highly by the panel of judges. So the challenge ran for 3 months and received 300 ideas and pretty widespread social engagement. The winning idea was around accessible venues. Accessibility is a recurring theme in our work and in the ideas, actually, that came out of Ideas Lab. So we immediately created a prototype website which allowed people to search for the shows and the venues according to their needs, and also to ask us about some of the needs perhaps that we weren't addressing. Which now, our ongoing work with this now is to integrate this into the API, digitally tagging information on venues and shows, mainstreaming the work. So it starts with a prototype, is developed, is mainstreamed right into the work. And of course, allowing other developers to use this data in a specialised way, however they want. So the I'm rattling through this. The crowdsourcing idea was then taken home. We talked before about staff and them taking ownership of the innovation agenda. So we created Project Lab, which was an internal competition which encouraged staff from each of the 12 festivals to submit innovation project proposals to the lab that could be trailed at their festival, and then all the lessons and any subsequent coding or prototypes openly shared within the family. And successful applicants then got £5,000 to develop those ideas in a sort of microfinancing world. There have been 3 rounds of this. Projects have included mobile development at the Jazz Festival, an internal site operations tool at the Book Festival. We at the Fringe did an industry-facing data capture project, and the Science Festival used it for interactive voting mechanism. I'm very quickly going to pick up 2 other examples. This is Blogmini. See what we did there? So this is all, we're talking about democratic approaches. So we've been open with the developers, we've been open with the staff, we've been open with the audiences. This is about trying to be open with the media. And the challenge here posed by the Hogmanay Festival was how can we understand how social media is changing the world of media relations. So we invited a group of 25 international travel bloggers to Edinburgh to travel and blog about Hogmanay and Scotland. They worked with experts to highlight the material as it went out there into the world, and we used the hashtag Blogmanay, which was already trending on Twitter by Boxing Day, and over the 2 weeks of the period, which was the 3 days in Hogmanay, but then they went out into Scotland and travelled around, reached more than 80 million people around the world. So that showed us a couple of things. It showed us the potential of a digital tourism campaign, but also how to work with that community. Traditional journalists have deadlines, like to work to itineraries. Bloggers, we found, want to create their own stories, go to their own places, and it's much more about a conversation and more open. So we've been talking about control and confidence over the last 2 days, so this really is about having enough confidence in your own programme just to put it out there and see what people want to write. Very quickly, because I've already had the 10-minute thing and Faith's got a whole 4 hours to go. This is about audiences at the International Festival choosing things that they might like to see, not knowing much about the programme, but being able to put in their preferences and from a slider there say what they like. An algorithm then feeds them 5 suggestions of festival shows which they might like, and links that to Facebook, links that to tickets, and then also encourages the festival to put in a wild card every so often, so they might just go that step further. This is pretty experimental, but I think feedback was that it was pretty well used. Very, very quickly, and then I'll hand back to Faith, just to say that we've been talking about the collective work, but it's very important that the individual festivals continue to innovate and think about their own practice as well. So just to give you a Fringe example, about us trying to deal with innovation on an iterative process and thinking about the scale of our audience and their propensity to deal with us in a digital world. So 2010, we developed an app. It was only in iOS. It was only information. 2011, we added it in Android. We also then did real-time ticket sales on both the apps. We sold 20,000 tickets that year. And by 2013, at 2 years of development, that was really successful. People loved it. We had 135,000 downloads. We sold 106,000 tickets. Great. But we knew by then that by 2014 we were increasingly seeing people on our website accessing us by mobile and tablet. 11% in 2011, 33% in 2013. So the apps are good and everyone loved them, but they're not getting to everyone. So we developed a responsive website, very much as we were talking about this morning, very much focused on the searching and the ticket buying experience and allowing companies to put in more information about themselves and their social channels, but also allowing the audience to search themselves, to share their itineraries and post reviews of what they've seen. So just continuing that engagement and conversation. And that was really a good decision for us. Our sales last year increased overall by 8%. The app was pretty constant. We sold about 10% of our total tickets on the app, and we sold and increased our web share by 10%. So now 65% of all of our sales are done online. And we're selling more than 1 million tickets, so that's a significant number. Over to you, Faith.
I thought, just kind of picking up on what Kath has said about the collective and the individual, it's really important to point out that we work collectively where working collectively is useful, and then they compete. They still compete. Kath is competing for market share with the International Festival, the Book Festival and others. It's quite a complicated environment. But also, even in terms of innovation or working digitally, they're competing as well. Because if those mechanisms then support them to do their job even better, then sometimes they work collectively, but also sometimes, again, they need to innovate almost further ahead than some of their colleagues. So it's a particularly interesting way of working, and quite an interesting balance for us as an organisation. So a lot of what Kath talked about is centred on the festivals themselves, and now I'd just like to provide a few examples of projects where partnerships are at the centre of what we do, extended partnerships. And first up, I'd just like to talk about tourism. So in the tourism world, we've taken some of our learning from the Blogmanet project and applied it to an evolving partnership with Lonely Planet, one of the world's leading travel publishers. And in July this year, we jointly hosted a Twitter conversation on the subject of festivals. Earlier, Kath mentioned that the Blogmanet project reached 80 million people over a 2-week period. Well, this Twitter chat reached 69 million people in 1 hour. So that was a kind of augmentation of scale, and that was through a very specific partnership, business partnership. At a local level, we've also sought to engage with the business community, not just the tourism, not just tourism partners, but others. So during our Edinburgh Art Festival, we commissioned an interactive illustrated map, which included all the exhibitions and public artworks, together with the Twitter feeds of participating galleries and business partners. In a more commercial venture, one of the Fringe sponsors, Dukers, the beer makers, took our API and created an app that showed you where you could get one of their pints of beer near any show. Excuse me for a second. And these prototypes have sparked the interest of Scottish Enterprise, which is the agency responsible for economic development in our country, Scotland. And they've now agreed to fund the next generation of Project Lab, that kind of microfinancing scheme, on condition that the future projects always have a private sector partner. Such additional resources are crucial to our ongoing operation and to extending our ambition. And it's here I'd also like to bring in the university sector. During the course of our innovation work, we noted that many of the universities in Scotland were already working in similar areas and were interested in identifying real-world scenarios and data that could be used as test beds for their work. And they think our data, it's on such an enormous scale, is really, really sexy. With this in mind, we initiated the Smart Tourism project with the computer science and informatics departments of 6 Scottish universities, and the Scottish Funding Council supported this programme, seeing these academic departments work with cultural and tourism organisations to deploy technology solutions which improve the tourist experience. And Smart Tourism represents for us and them a very practical way of building working relationships with relevant research groups across Scotland, and of course getting additional education resources for the benefit of the festivals. And an example of the actual work that's being carried out is that the Edinburgh International Festival are currently working with Glasgow University on a product which helps groups attach their festival memories to previous listings, which at the same time help suggest future events of interest. And such wide learning is something that we are very interested in, and why we often talk about our role, and others talk about our roles in Scotland as a pathfinder. In other words, experiences are torment for the benefit of others. So we go through quite difficult processes sometimes to get where we need to get to. We prototype, we give ourselves a hard time, we contort ourselves, but often get somewhere interesting and solid. If we get somewhere, it tends to be very solid. And those projects can then often roll out to the wider cultural sector. Because of our scale, we can act as a kind of R&D environment for some of these projects. And 2 of our projects have been taken to a national level by the country's arts development agency, Creative Scotland. The first was the Culture Hack programme, which we involved the whole cultural sector in initially, but which they're now funding and using as a core part of how they deliver. And the second was our Geek in Residence programme, where a young developer was recruited to provide creative advice and inspiration with no commercial agenda or imperative. And this again was taken to the national level, but we insisted that, as it was our original idea, that the benefits we got back were that we would continue to get a geek to come and look after us and live with us and inspire us. So this is all very good in and of itself, but it's also important in ensuring that we try and stay in the lead, and that is also, we're also seen as supporting the cultural sector, which is who we're all about, both here and internationally. The leadership position's also been seen around the broadcasting sector. So the BBC, our national broadcaster, has developed a physical production presence at a hub during the festivals in August, and now a specific online Edinburgh Festival site. And this year, this led to the creation of a performance a day on the BBC Arts Live, as well as 100 free shows at their venues and 250 hours of broadcasting time, all huge shifts upwards for us. And again, it allows us to experiment with this new platform and in a new partnership. So that's just a quick outline of some of the innovative work we've been undertaking in Edinburgh. You may notice some of the guiding principles at work about openness, about a democracy in that environment, if not the consensus one in our process, the value of prototyping and a willingness to share. And for this session, we've obviously looked at and focused on innovation audience-based projects, but it's also important that we've looked at innovations in other areas. So, for example, in environmental work, we've created our first spin-off company called Creative Carbon Scotland. Due to the experimentation and R&D we did in our own, with our own festivals, we realised that in order to really achieve, it needed to happen at a national level with all of our partners, venues, artists, producers, etc. And Creative Carbon Scotland leads on behavioural change in the cultural sector across the environmental agenda. And then in programming, we've created a cultural diplomacy programme, Momentum, which visibly delivers work to our festivals, but it's actually an innovative approach to cultural diplomacy and also a way of connecting the sector, the cultural sector in Scotland, to a much wider reach in terms of artists and producers they can work with. But that's all for another day. And now we'd just like to thank you for your time and are happy. Have we got time? Probably not. Yeah. Take questions. Yeah. Believe it? Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting.